After 25 years of investigating haunted locations across the world, Steven LaChance says he finally understands why places hold on to the dead. And the answers isn't what the paranormal community wants to hear. Welcome back to The Common Historian, where history meets the supernatural. I'm Jeremy, and tonight our guest is author and paranormal investigator Steven LaChance, whose story has been featured on Discovery Channel and Travel Channel. His debut book was The Uninvited, and his brand new book, Architecture of Shadows, may be his most important work yet. Sit back, grab your favorite beverage, dim the lights, and prepare to journey into the world where history refuses to stay buried. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, not a problem. I'm excited to chat with you tonight. So, you've been in the field for 25 years or plus, I believe.
Long time.
When you step into a location now, what do you notice that you didn't notice in the beginning?
The people. The people more than anything. I think, when we first start out, we're excited about the fact of what we might see, what we might experience in a location that we somehow, and I've seen this with myself, I've seen it with other teams, we somehow overlook the person sitting there on the couch that's terrified, out of their wits.
Yeah,
I think in time you learn to relate to them a little bit better and little bit more. And especially in my case, because I was a haunting case myself to begin with. So it was a lot easier to go. But I think that has become stronger, that relationship between me and them through the years. I think that I found that they are the experts in what we do. When you walk into a location, you can't walk in there like I'm the authority on this place because they are, not you. And it takes it takes a little bit of humility, if you will,
yeah, yeah.
to be able to do that and sit down and say, okay, now you tell me about this, and I want to listen. And no, I don't think you're crazy. And let's see if we can figure this out. And I think that's the number one thing.
That's the number one thing. Yeah, but I think, for myself, even I'm going to be going on my first investigation in May overnight at the Wildwood Sanitarium. I'm
You're going to
excited.
sanitarium for your first time.
Yes, it'll be my first one.
Oh,
But some
okay.
context, some context. About 20 years ago, I lived in a haunted house for 2 years.
All right.
I saw full body apparitions, the whole works. So we'll see. I want to see if something can scare me. I don't know.
The thing is I don't think it's about fear as much as it's about all kinds of different things. You might experience it on a different level because when you're going into it like a family situation, or in your case, you're going to a location, you come in it a little differently than you do when it's your personal life. When your
Yeah,
personal life, you have all these different emotions that are kind of folded into it, and fear is probably there, but it's not one of the number one things, I think. There's a lot of other
true.
things. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be interested to hear what happens.
Yeah, I'm not going alone. I'm going with a local team. They're more the experts. I've never actually went and investigated. So for
Uh,
me, it's, I think, more.
I'm not an expert, and I've been doing this for 25 years. No, we don't know the answers to this, and we don't pretend we do.
Yeah, but I think it'll be fun. I've heard good things about the Wildwood, and I think I'll enjoy
Cool.
it.
I know you got to tell me what happens.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'm going, I think May 16th is the
Wow.
night we're staying. So it's gonna be fun. So the Union Screaming House changed your life permanently.
Mhm.
How much does that experience still shape the way you approach every case that you walk into?
Well, I think considering that I came to this because of a personal experience, because I was trying to figure out what was going on in my own life, in my own home, that I bring a lot of different things into it that maybe somebody that's doing this because they're just curious. I started out on this journey looking for answers to why. That's the big question, isn't it? Why is this happening to us? Why did this happen? Why am I carrying my child out in the middle of the night? Those kind of things. And those whys continue. And, and it was years of going into places trying to find out those questions of why is this happening? What are these things? And why do they affect us in the way they do? And, and I think that is the main driving force with someone that has been through it. I think a lot of times, I think people misunderstand us, the ones that have lived through something like you and me. They think
Yeah.
if they came in and they said, well, the cause of this was A, B, and C, and they could prove it, that we would, if it wasn't a ghost, a demon, or the devil himself, we would go, no, 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 no. That's not true. I think the thing is, with those of us that live with it, I think we're more skeptical than probably most of your real skeptics. It's not so much the what of it is. If you could tell us what it is, that's fine. It's not going to change the experience of what we had. As a matter of fact, it might put it to rest. So it's a little different way of going in at it than most people.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I think I'm quite skeptical when it comes to, I've seen stuff, I've heard stuff, I've seen stuff, but I still each time if something new comes up, I want to prove that it's actually paranormal and not,
Well, yeah,
something
yeah,
else too.
that's the thing is it's that's there's always that driving force of to prove what it is. And and it in it's not always paranormal, because if you live through something paranormal, you go through this period of time where everything's paranormal. I mean, when your house starts screaming in the middle of the night, it starts shaking, and you're seeing things that, every door that opens, every crack that you hear, every creak in the floorboards, that's paranormal. So you go through this thing. But something happens along the way that it switches. And then you go at it through this other thing that everything's not paranormal. So let's try to figure this out. And most of the time, you can find some answers for things. There's reasons for noises in the attic, right? But there's those times when things don't match up and you can't find an explanation for it. And those are the things we're talking about. Those are the things that are interesting. And those are the
Yeah.
things we're trying to figure out the answers to. Unfortunately, we have not done a very good job of it, have we? I don't think we'll ever figure it totally out, but hey, it's
Yeah.
worth
Oh, it is. Yeah. So you've been on kind of both sides of the microphone during your career. I think you've done radio, television, stage.
it. Was a radio broadcaster from the age of 16.
Yeah.
So I've done broadcasting, I've been a producer, I've done it all. So
Yeah. Now, does the broadcasting background change how you tell a paranormal story compared to someone who just writes about it?
in interviews, I'm a better interview that way, maybe. In writing, no. In writing, I got to tell you, when I sat down and I wrote The Uninvited, that came from here. There was no sugarcoating it, no stopping it. It was a freight train. I tried. That book was like an exorcism on its own. Seriously, writing it. But from the
Yeah.
podcasting standpoint, like us talking here, sure, there's some technique and there's some things that go into it. I don't think about it anymore. I mean, I've been doing it for
Yeah.
so long, you just kind of forget. People that know me will tell you that when the microphone comes on, you see him. There's the other Steve. Because I'm really kind of quiet, shy guy, really. So, you know, but yeah, I think in writing, no. In broadcasting, yes. In broadcasting, I'm wanting to get the point across as best I can. I hope, you hope.
You know, I think you do. So kind of going through the architecture of shadows, this book took 25 years of work to write. What finally made you stop and say, now is the time to put it on paper?
So 25 years, for one. Now was the time because it felt like I'd been doing this for so long that there was a lot of it I didn't talk about, that I felt like it was time, to sit down and say, okay, I told you I was going out into this world and I was going to go learn about these things and I was going to go try to figure it out. Well, this is what I figured out. This is what I know to be true or think to be true. And I think the true question about that is, and I think a lot of people kind of balk at it when I stress that we think we don't know because we don't know. But there's certain things that follow patterns. Over time, you start to see those patterns. There's certain way things behave, and you see those behaviors, and you start to be able to put those together. Now, the interesting thing is when it comes to the labeling of these things, I have a very hard time with that. And I'm gonna use Union as an example because when I was going through the screaming house, I had the Catholic Church do a 156-page report calling it a demonic haunting and a possession. Okay. So, but I also had people come in and say, well, that's a poltergeist. I also have people come in and say, well, that's residual at times. And I also have people come in and say it's the devil himself. You know, I mean, it was just, it's a ghost, it's this person, it's that person, it's this thing and that thing. The truth of the matter is that you can't label these things. You really, really can't, folks. And I've tried. And the only reason that I think the labels become useful over a period of time is it tries to distinguish them. But the truth of the matter is that they all, like in the book, we go through different types of haunting, residual, intelligent, haunted persons, haunted places, those kinds of things. It's basic ghost hunting, but you go through it. But I go through it with the point to prove to you that all of these things work in layers. You rarely go into one place, and you're going to see this, especially in a sanitarium kind of situation. Things work in layers. You're going to see things that they're going to feel repetitive, like something that's playing over and over and over again. You're going to see it feel something that might feel like it's communicating with you. You could, in one case, I was in an asylum type situation where I was thrown against the wall. I mean, so
Oh,
it could get physical. I mean, but all of this stuff can happen at once. And I thought that was the thing that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about that. And I wanted to explain to him that there is nothing wrong with questioning all of this. And there is nothing wrong with being skeptical about all of this. There is nothing wrong about looking at the evidence and looking for patterns. There is nothing wrong by standing back and looking at people and say, I don't know. And I think that's what bothers me more than anything is because I started seeing, you asked the $1 million question, by the way. I started over and over this, it's a ghost and it's Aunt Mary. And I'm like, oh man, if I could reunion when we were in the screaming house, if I had a penny for everything it was and every person that was in there and every medium that came in there and told me what it was, oh my gosh. And that's the thing. I'm like, I just get tired of this assurity of people saying, this is what this is. I'm like, well, how do you know? Well, give me the reasons why you think that is.
yeah,
Okay. And you notice I use the word thing. And then they'll say, well, it is this because of this. And I said, well, that's your perception. That's your hypothesis, maybe.
yeah,
You bring to this a lot of different ideas, and those ideas are interesting. But once you start saying it is a ghost, it is a demon, you shut down conversation. And when you shut down conversation, you shut down research. And when you shut down research, you take us back 5 steps. Does that make
yeah.
sense? And that was why I wrote architecture. It was time, for
Something to bring it out.
this average guy out here that's been living through this extraordinary shit to be able to say, look, come on, this is it. This is it. This is
Yeah.
what it is.
So you say that this book doesn't represent the paranormal's party line. That's kind of a bold statement to the community. Where, what does that party line get wrong? And I think
I
you went into it a little bit in the last question, but
it is. And I've been saying this for a long time because remember, anytime I talk about something that I feel was a mistake, I'm talking from here. This guy made them
yeah,
first, okay? And one of those is following along everybody else. Okay. The worst thing you could do is turn on your TV on a Friday night and sit down and watch a paranormal show and then go out Saturday night and do what they did. Because, and the worst thing you can do is to go to someone and they say, these are the rules of how you're supposed to do this. Okay. No, no. Why? Why? Tell me why. Well,
Yeah.
because this is how we do it and this is how it's done. Well, you got reasoning behind it. And then, of course, the word I think, I'm like, oh, okay, you think. Well, okay, what you think is what I should do because you think. That doesn't make much sense to me. I would rather you guys be out there trying out new things, doing things on your own, stretching. I don't want you doing, and no disrespect to the entertainment part of our industry because it's there. But I want you out there not doing something just because a Joe Blow on television did it that way. I want you to do it, to think for yourself. When I first started into this, we had people that were experimenting with Tesla coils and they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. A lot of that's gone away, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You don't see it anymore, and you don't see the conversations the way they used to be. Because soon as someone says, I see things differently, they're shut down with this idea, well, that's not being paranormally unified. What? No, paranormal unity is about not being ignorant to each other. Paranormal unity is not about not being able to disagree with each other about ideas. You know,
Yeah.
civilization was built on ideas and communication. You shut that down and forget it. Forget it. And I see a lot of that. Yeah. So I'm not towing the party line in that way. But I mean it well. I don't, it's not a criticism of people as a whole. It's a criticism of myself because I did these same things. I made all these same mistakes. And I'm going to make more because I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you, you've been doing this long enough. You're going to make it, you're going to learn a lot of hard lessons. But it's how it works. But our responsibility as those who have been doing it, as senior members of the community, I just call myself a senior, God help me, but it's true, is to be to speak these things, to speak these things that we know to be true and that we know are going to help people instead of shutting them down. I always hated to see the guy in the corner at a haunting, the part of the team that had the EMF meter guy. This guy, you've seen it, on,
Yeah.
he sits there and he has the meter in his hand, and that's all he does. You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, put it down. Put it down. You're missing so much in this world and so much of what this is. And it's not all about the dead. And believe it or not, a lot of it's about the living. Put down the
Yeah.
meter. Experience this, please. Please. All right. It's so
Yeah, because a lot of it is also your senses. What you bring with you is your kind of your senses. Your feeling. I believe at least.
you
You know.
know, paranormal lockdown. You've heard ghost
Yes. Yeah.
paranormal lockdown. I was doing paranormal lockdown and was calling it years before they started that on television. But I looked at my thing is I wanted to look at research and investigation from three levels. I wanted the level where you brought in the equipment with people. Okay. And you had that part of the research and the investigation. Then there was the lockdown part where the equipment went in, you locked it in, you took all the human element out. But then there was this other part. And this was the part that was the most fascinating. And it's when you took all the equipment away from everybody and you just put them in there as human beings. And you said, go experience this. And then you tell me what you experience, what you hear, what you feel, sometimes taste, smell. What are all of the senses that you have within you experiencing? And it became very interesting. And what you find out is those three things are very connected. If you do it in just the order I tell you, your investigations and your research is going to just find things you won't even imagine believing. But you got to be able to take that. And that was taking a chance. That was able to say, can you imagine the first time I told my team, put down all your stuff? Or that I told them, put your cameras in and stuff, and we're walking out and locking the door. They thought I was out. I lost my mind, you know. And maybe I had, but in the process of losing my mind, we learned something. And
Yeah.
sometimes we all go a little crazy, I guess.
So you've talked about hauntings taking shape through patterns. What's the most consistent pattern you've seen across locations that most investigators overlook entirely?
Let's talk about some of the more serious cases because I think that's where one of the more serious patterns and the more obvious pattern shows up. one of the things, if you live through a haunting like I did, we kind of all know each other. It's like we kind of all gravitate to each other. I don't know why that happens. But what you find out doing the work after a period of time is that a lot of times the people that are in some of the most dire, frightening, haunting type situations, it's like the stuff that you would think is the worst type case. They're at the lowest points in their lives. There's other things going on. And that was the case of mine. If you read The Uninvited, you'll see that I spend time going through that. And I do it on purpose because it's very important, because it's part of it. The personal lives of people going through these, on most cases, you will find the pattern repeating, that they are at one of the lowest points of their living life. Multiple things are going on. Multiple family members are infected, and that is even before the paranormal steps. So why is that? So the question goes, so we have, okay, are they causing it? Is this thoughtful? Poltergeist type thing?
Yeah,
Are they
that's always a
interacting,
possibility.
right? Are they, what, yeah, don't you think I have a thought of that? Did we do this to ourselves? Or are we attracting something? Does something feel the negativity, the turmoil of life, that thing that you're going through is attractive? Or, or you could even say, is it a mass psychosis episode? I mean,
Yeah,
seriously. Or,
yeah,
there's a lot of different things that it could be. So, it's when a dog is down, you can kick him in a lot of different ways. But it's true. It's true that, and I'm speaking from a very personal point too, that you're at the lowest point in your life when these things happen, most of the time. And I think that is the most interesting pattern that I've seen through the personal cases. I like looking at things, the personal cases, I look at it a little differently than I do the research historical cases. They're different. Helping families is different. But this is something that I think is interesting. And I think it feeds on each other. It's parasitical. It feeds on each other. And I've even seen within these cases that it almost acts viral. One
yeah,
person affects the other, affects the other, affects the other. A lot of times we'll see that you'll have one thing happening in one location. You'll bring a team in to investigate, and all of a sudden people are having stuff happen in their houses and all over the place. So is it contagious? You know, there's a lot here, is what I'm telling you. But the one thing is the personal lives, that pattern. You had pinned me down on one, it would be that.
okay. So, you were talking about trauma, well, history, trauma, and memory are all cores of your book. As someone who thinks historically, how far back do you need to go to truly understand why a place is haunted today?
As far as you can go, because it's all it's all layers as far as you can go, and to be able to understand. I don't know how many places I stepped into, and I didn't know they were haunted, and the haunting happens, and then I'm scrambling to research. You know,
Yeah,
uh, to go in with that information, to be a historian first. Oh, that's where the interesting stuff is, the stories, by the way. So to go in with that first is incredible, and it opens the world to a lot of possibilities. However, you got to be careful with it. You don't want to go in with so much history that it closes down any other possibility. Just because A, it happened there once doesn't mean it's why B is happening. But it's important to know. And as far as I can go back, I will. Yeah, I talk about a case in the book out of Vienna, Austria, where I was staying in Leopoldstadt, which was the Jewish quarter in Vienna. It's where the Crystal Nacht happened. Okay.
yeah,
And the building I was staying in looked like it could have been built in the 60s. Actually, I thought it had been. Turned out it hadn't. And there was a whole lot of activity there. But the thing is you walk around the streets in Leopoldstadt, and they have the brass plates that tell you who was there, what happened to them, where they went. And I didn't see the brass plate in this. And this very, very haunted place. And it was an example. And and I'm like researching. I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense. This building has to be older. I couldn't find the age of this building. And I'm getting ready to leave that building to head to the airport. And I step out onto the curb and I have my suitcases with us. And I look up and there's a rabbi standing, an old rabbi, old rabbi standing across the street from me. I look down at my feet. I could get goosebumps talking. And there's a plate about the place that I've been staying. And it named the people that own the building and how 21 people get choked up about this. Have been taken to Auschwitz and they died from that building. And I looked up and I had tears coming down my face at the moment. And the rabbi was crying too. And he
No.
looked at me and it was this, I can't explain the feeling of understanding that went between the two of us. I got in the car and I watched him fade away as we left. But yeah. So I mean, history is real important.
Sure.
Especially, that's an emotional story. I haven't told that story out now on the
Oh,
that was a hard one to talk about. But Rome's like that too, or Egypt or the Holy Land, Jerusalem, Alice.
oh, I
You
can imagine.
you better know what you're walking into with some of those places. But yeah, you need to. So read everything you can. Read everything. And it doesn't have to be, and this is the thing that I think, we as investigators, we're really excited to say, I want to investigate blah, 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 blah. And it's the places everybody wants to investigate or research. But there's so much out there that you don't have to do that. Every place has a story. There's places on the street you live right now that have stories. So history is not just about Rome or Greece or, Leopold said, I could say that was a good example of what I'm trying to tell you. I mean, history happens everywhere. So get in there and do as much as you can beforehand. Understand the area.
Yeah. And I agree. I like, well, of course, I'm a common historian, so I like to dig into the history of different places. I'm actually going to be starting a little segue off of my interviews as an extra on my channel soon. I'm calling it the Darkness Files. That's the working title right now. But basically, I'm going to dive into different topics. And it's not, paranormal, cryptid, true crime, little mixture of everything in there, but digging into the history. So excited about that.
It connects. It all connects.
Yeah.
Emotion. What we know about emotion is that emotion leaves traces of energy. We're all made out of energy. Emotion comes in energy. We
Yeah.
leave traces of ourselves in these places, and that's history.
It is.
That's something that was surprising is how much of a historian you really have to become a really good researcher.
Yeah.
You really do. And it's like, but if you don't like the story, get out now, because the story is the interesting part of it. I mean, why else do this? You're not getting any answers totally. I mean, why else do this? You're getting the activity, but why else do this if you can't connect it to a story in the history of things?
Yeah.
Tri-County Truck Stop, Villa Ridge, Missouri. I wrote a book called Crazy about that. If you've not read it, you should read it.
I haven't read it yet.
The book is based on urban legends. It's based on actual paranormal research. I do everything, history, everything goes into that book. And I mean, some of the craziest stuff is, there's a character that's a hermit that's living in the bottom of this truck stop. And you would think that is the most made up character you ever thought in your life. And he was a real person. He actually, yes. And if people would walk downstairs into this truck stop to get near him, he would throw feces at them. True story.
Oh,
And right. He became an interesting character because he became like the thing that grandmothers would say, you would be good, or Banksy's going to come and get, kind of thing. But, yeah, the layers of history of just a place like a truck stop, which is very transient, people coming in and out, the things that happen there at a given time, things that are seeing, activity that's seen, the value of learning history from that place, it was incredible. And to be able to take that history and go, you know what? this place is almost behaving, and it felt like at times that it was almost a metaphor for itself. This truck stop was almost a metaphor for hell on earth because of the things that attracted and the kind of things that went on there. So
Yeah.
it was just a tangent, but yeah, history. History.
So, what do you want people to walk away from Architecture of Shadows believing that they didn't believe before they opened the book?
Ah, that is the thing about me. Every single book you'll ever read that I ever write, even my fiction, which I've done some fiction, is I never tell my readers what to believe
Oh,
ever. Want to tell you what to believe. I want to give you ideas. I wanted to incite thought within the reader. I want people to leave anything that they see that I've done in my work, in my books, and I want them to ask the question, what do I believe? I don't care. I think the problem is you can go out there and you can bang yourself or your head against the wall going, believe me, believe me, believe me. You know, you do this long enough. You don't go around and tell people your house screwed and expect everybody to believe it. That's insanity. People aren't going to
yeah,
believe it. Not every person's going to believe that, even though it happened to you. But what you can do is say, let me tell you what I've experienced. Let me tell you the things I've seen. Let me tell you the things I think. And then from that, I want you to take this away and I want you to go, what do I think about all this? Because I think, in anything you deal with, and I'm going to say in anything in life, and that includes learning, and I'm even going to say spirituality comes from within. It's an inner thing and the inner questions. And this is all, believe it or not, tied into the inner being and inner questions of us all. And I mean, you have to decide where you stand in on it. The saddest thing that you could ever do is to come to the end of this life and go, and somebody go, well, what did you think about? What did you think that was? And you'd be able to say, well, I never really thought about it. What a waste of time.
yeah,
What a waste of
yeah,
time. So hopefully that's the thing, as I provide enough for people to think on their own. I don't want to be I don't want to be I don't want to be the guy on the television screen telling you you have to believe this and that. I sometimes feel like it insults intelligence, and or the thought of don't what is the word? Don't mansplain to me. You know,
yeah,
you're people explain. We don't need to do that
yeah.
because I think we're all capable of coming up. I've had people come up to me and say, I read what happened to you and your family, and I don't believe it. What do you think about that? And I'm like, well, that's good. That is exactly what I wanted you to do because what you've shown to me is you thought about it. And if you thought about it, that's why I wrote the book. I wanted you to think about it. And you're not going to believe everything. Just decide what you believe, what you think. That's what's most important.
That makes sense.
I'm 62 years old. I'm to the point where I'm tired of people. You'll find that when you get to be about, or you're past 50, you get to be at the age where you don't care. It's like, I don't, this is what I think. I want to know what I think about these things. If I have to answer for what I learned on this crazy ride, on this crazy plane, and this crazy thing, I wouldn't be able to tell them what I thought about it. At least tell them that I helped other people decide what they think
Yeah.
is.
But kind of moving, another recent book you had was Zombie Road. Every town has a haunted road, but Zombie Road carries, I think, a different weight. What was it about the location that made you say this one deserves a book?
Zombie Road I sat with for a while before I wrote the book. I did a television show on it, as you all know. Most people. I was one of I went to Zombie Road. I was still the the screaming house stuff was still going, but some of the investigative parts of it. So I had a team at that point, and I went in. The screaming house was taking its toll on everybody. It was wearing everybody down. That was one of those hauntings where people just turned against each other, eating each other alive. That happens in some of these things. So I thought, well, let's do something fun. So let's go out to this road that's an urban legend that's supposed to be haunted. And I thought we were going to take a walk in the middle of the night down this old spooky road in Pooh's 100-acre wood. And it turned out to be the freaking Blair Witch Project. I'm not kidding.
Oh, no.
I mean, shadow figures stepping out from behind trees, which, by the way, if anybody's ever seen the television show, you saw the shadow figures step out from behind the trees that we filmed. So, yeah, that became interesting. But what became more interesting is when you get into Zombie Road and you start into the history of it, it's layers of things. It's that layers of history that we're talking about and how that history layers and how everybody plays into this history and how the urban legend grows and it survives and how the telephone game. That's one of the things, the first things I talk about in the Zombie Road book that I love is the telephone game. And you've all played it in school, right? You know, you get in the circle, somebody tells somebody, whispers somebody something. And by the time it comes around the circle, it's changed completely. There's a kernel of truth to it, right? But it's changed so much that that kernel of truth is hard to find. It's much like urban legends work. And believe it or not, it's a much, because some of our hauntings work as well. But it's the energy that people bring into those cases. And then you start dealing with things like, you know, residual energies, and you start dealing with thought form energy. You know, when you go in wanting to see a ghost, you're going to see a ghost. You start dealing with, I could even say alien energy. I mean, you go into all of this and you get into the stories, and that's what it was interesting to me is how all these stories play into this one place and how I could find examples of them in different places around the world where they played out in a lot the same ways, except with the interesting thing with Zombie Road is you had them all going at once. I mean, I would do walks down the road with groups of people, and I'm talking 50 people in a day together. We would walk the road in the middle of the day and stuff would happen. Mysterious stuff would happen. And it's like, how do you explain this? You know, and it's so Zombie Road that I waited and I waited and I waited. And architecture was already on the table. I was already working on it, but I'm like, I gotta enter. You know, I did time with the truck stop, Tri County, which most people had heard about, and I did Screaming House, obviously. I even did the Exorcist case, St. Louis. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you know, I have to do Zombie Road here before I go into architecture. I can't really go into architecture without doing Zombie Road because those that follow me are going to expect this book before. So, you know, and
Had to come out first.
it really did because it plays into a lot of what architecture is because it is the basis of one. You know, these other books. You know, when you look at the Unembodied, you look at Crazy, and you look at Confrontation with Evil and The Exorcist, and you look at how those books are. You know, they're pinpoints onto those things. Where architecture takes this more wide scope look at these things. Then I think it was interesting to do that. And another reason is that there was a lot of misunderstanding about Zombie Road, you know, and it was a chance to clear that up too. So, yeah, there are a lot of
Yeah.
reasons. But if you're a history, and you want to see how history and urban legend work, Zombie Road will teach you that. That was fun.
Yeah. I have not had a chance to read the book. I need to, I think, get like the audiobook because I listen
Well,
more to than
I
I
got
actually will sit and read a book.
done the audio. I got to see if I got to get it done. But I will. I promise. If you're an audio person, it's
Yeah,
coming
I'm more the audio person.
to my time.
And
The technology towards audiobooks has changed so drastically from the years when I was doing television commercials that I've been holding off a little bit because there's certain things about it that are going to become obsolete and it's going to become a lot of easier thing to do. The Uninvited will probably get done by me in architecture. Architecture shadows probably get done by me. I don't know the others, but I, you know, to put myself through the Uninvited, it's going to be a straight jacket probably afterwards. What people want.
yeah, so I know that you said that there was layers of history with Zombie Road. I think you trace back multiple cultures, like I think French settlers, German immigrants
There's the Indian settlers. There's
yeah, all of them leaving their mark. Do you think the layers of trauma from the different people are making, making the road even more active?
sure. I think it all feels it. This is the way you when you start talking about the layering of it. It's like each of the layers kind of lays on each other. That's good. And it becomes this whole. So you have all of these things that are actually fueling each other. and people, believe it or not, we feel a lot of, you know, and I've seen that work too, and so yeah, it's all connected, in all of the different ways. And I could go on to that road and I could tell you that, here thought forms could be working. Here residual could be working. Here it's the stone theory working. Here it's the running water working. Here it's this woman died on the train tracks. Here, the Civil War kind of played. Here a tragic accident. Here they found a field of deer that were mutilated, they probably thought was ritual. Here they were performing human sacrifice. There were things like that going on. Now, I think that's interesting, and then so you get all this stuff, you get the history and stuff, and you start backing it up with police reports. It's one of the few places where I had a detective tell me, you know, be careful going down there. No, you're and he said, shit happens there, Steve. Be careful going down there. And if you're down there after dark, be willing to deal with what you get.
Yeah.
And he was serious. And I mean, it was one
Wow.
of the few times where I ever felt like that. And it's one of the places that it ended up, you can't go in there at night, which it's good because the road is, there's parts of the place that's fairly dangerous. How if you fell, no, looking back now, my older self, if you fell, no one would be able to hear you scream, But now they patrol it and you get a hefty fine. So, but you don't have to go in there. You can go in there in the daytime. Experiences
Yeah.
all the time when it's out there. But yeah, I had a police officer. It was interesting. And you start getting into some, that reached into some of the satanic panic. I'm telling you, it was like this is one of those places where each time you would get into a story, it would have these fingers that would go off, and you were off on this other trail. The Exorcist case was like that, where
Well,
it was like get to a certain spot, and then the next thing you were off on the tangent and you were looking into some type of occult practice that you never even thought you might look into. My God, I think I've read every banned book of the Bible doing the Exorcist case. Yeah, I'm serious. And Zombie Road was kind of like that too. And it was like you would go off on these tangents of these things and you would just spend days reading about. And, it might come back and turn into a paragraph, but it told some of the story. And it was important because it was keys to the layers of that shit. Does all that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah. And I think even the flood of 1993 played a role in the story as well, I believe.
Personal. That was personal.
Mhm.
The flood in 1993 was awful year. A
Yeah.
lot were losing their homes and everything down there. The road, they were sandbagging it. I had some personal losses during that year. For everybody around that area at that time, because it's not far from where I live. Zombie
Oh,
Road. Yeah,
well, it's not.
it's maybe 20 minutes
Oh,
east of Union. Let's scream. Yeah. So, it's like people were all going through things, and the flood played a lot of part in that, and, and the loss and the sorrow and everything. And it
yeah.
seemed to trigger a lot of the activity just went through the roof around those times.
Yeah.
It's like I said, we play into what we get, you play into it, you can trigger it. Doesn't that explain? No, think about this. Think about this, Jeremy. Doesn't that explain why a certain person can live in a haunted house and then they move out and the next person that comes in and nothing happens?
Yeah.
They move out, the next family comes in, well, hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
And I think the Zombie Road is a good example of that because especially when you look at the flood in 93, you look at the emotionality and the low point everybody was in and how it played
Yeah.
into. I think it's a good example of that. Zombie Road is really interesting in that way. I think it plays into a lot of things as an investigator, as a researcher, as a paranormal hobbyist, as a historian.
Yeah.
Something to look at.
Yeah. So kind of moving away from zombie roads, more general. You give me one location, not the screaming house, that generally shook you. Something that permanently changed how you think.
There's one that comes to mind, that outside the screening house. It was a Southern Missouri case. We were called in. And it was a young girl who had moved in with her grandparents. Now, when I'm talking to the grandparents and they're wanting us to come, the grandparents are telling me that the house is things are thrown across the room. We can't sleep. There's noises. Our house is haunted and we don't know what to do. Can you come? And in talking to them, I found out that they took the young girl was taken from her mother, so her mother can go get some rehab help. And she missed her mom. They were very close. So I'm thinking, okay, what is this going in? So we get there and I'm sitting in the living room and I look at this big screen television. And this was, you know, mid 2000s. So, it's like 2005, 2006, 2006. And I'm looking at a television and there's a metal basket that is through the screen of this television. And I was sitting there and they're telling me the story, and I'm watching the little girl and she's all sad, sitting there nervous. And all of a sudden, the dining room in the room right next to me where I could sit and stay, I saw china cabinets start just crashing down. Not kidding. And this grandfather is standing in the middle of the room and he looks at me and he goes, "Help me." And I wasn't quite sure, you know, at that moment how I was going to get it done, and I knew it was the girl. I knew it was the girl. And, there was a lot of people that were going, well, I think this is poltergeist. Or no, I think this is demon. I think this is poltergeist. And I'm like, I think it's her. And I think
Mm,
it's her emotion. And I think this emotion is taken off so much in her longing and her missing for her mother. And this is my thoughts, not fact,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
what I thought. And so because we're there and we're investigating, we're trying to figure this out. The house calls 911. The literal
Mm.
house line calls 911. The police show up at the door. Okay. So now I'm dealing with a house that's falling down around itself, literally. These grandparents that are, I'm afraid the old man's going to have a heart attack, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the police officer says, I have to come in because obviously the call came. I'm like, well, none of us made the call, but sure, you're welcome to come in. Police officer goes into the hallway and there's a bookcase at the end of the hall. He's standing there and I see he's got his flashlight out and I see him draw his gun. It freaked me out. The bookcase
Mm.
coming after him. The bookcase is coming down the hall after it. And he let that house shook up. That police officer became a paranormal investigator.
Oh,
And as a matter of fact, years later, I was giving a lecture down in that same area, and somebody said, I know so and so, and they were there the night that the case came after that. And then I knew exactly who they were talking about. It was one of the few places that we removed the family for at least the night, for a few days. And when that happened, the, the house was unlivable when they came, unlivable when they came back. They were never able to live.
mm,
And so how do you explain that? I don't have total answers for you. And
yeah.
that's the frustrating part of this, is when you go into places and you don't have answers and you have to think on your feet. I had a case out of that I was dealing with in Kuwait. And this family came to me because they felt like their son was possessed.
Oh,
Like, well, what happened? And the boy was on the bus and he bumped into an old woman. The old woman looked at him. She gave him the evil eye and placed a curse upon him.
mm,
And I'm like, well, you think this is the devil? Well, it's not really our religion. I'm like, well, then this is how we have to deal with this. They in their eyes, they called it a jinn.
yeah.
So we had to deal with it through their religious and take it care of. But that's an example of how you have to think on your feet. I had one case where a little girl was seeing a monster climb through her window at night. And I asked her to draw the monster, and she drew a man in a ski mask. It turned out that somebody was climbing through the window in the middle of the night and were raping her. So
Oh,
everything's paranormal. Those are the most important lessons. I mean, that one case, that's the one that stands out. But there's, you start talking about it and these other things start coming in, that
Yeah.
stand out because they teach you and they teach you different things about yourself and about being able to think on your feet constantly. Nothing's ever for sure. Nothing's ever certain.
Yeah. So you've been on a few different TV shows. You've seen how the media packages the paranormal. What do they almost always get wrong?
Well, they have to have a conclusion. They do. They do. And I mean, in speaking from somebody that is work broadcasting, I can tell you that television is always going to look to tie up loose ends. They'll like loose ends at the end of the show, unless
Yeah,
you're going to another season.
true.
Well, it's like watching Stranger Things, and I know many of you out there are going to go, "Well, they really didn't tie it up." Well, how did you feel about it? Same with the paranormal cases, right? They, they want to tie it up. It
Yeah,
is what you see on television when we sit down to give interviews. God, just for a haunting, the union interview lasted 16 hours, and for a 42-minute show, I mean, confrontation or evil, the Roland Doe, the exorcism of Roland Doe for
yeah,
some that took 8 hours. So you don't see everything that we talk about ever. It's some
yeah,
when I get into the films, I can't even tell you. But they always look to try to tie up loose ends at the end. And so they're not comfortable with sitting with the fact of I don't know. They're not comfortable with sitting with the fact of there is no answers. And sometimes you just got to settle with that. And that's, I think, with the uninvited, I think that's why you haven't seen the film yet, because I'm really resistant to tighten it up in the neat little box. Because it isn't a
yeah,
box. I think that's the thing that if I could say I wish they would do is be honest enough and be brave enough to say we don't know and not everything has an answer.
yeah,
I think even
yep,
you watch Fear House, on the Screaming House, they even tried to put that in a little box at the end. It was playing on their fears. Yeah,
yeah,
but was that all of it? No, there's more to it. It wasn't that cut and dry. But
yeah,
yeah, so television's like
yeah. Is there a case you walked away from that still bothers you? Not because of what happened, but because what you couldn't figure out?
what frustrates me more than anything is, I don't mind. I've gotten to the point of not getting answers totally. You do. What frustrates me is when I walked in a case, and there was a case I could give an example of. There was this woman. She would take pictures, and she would take the most outrageous paranormal pictures you ever seen in your life. And I tested her. I gave her Polaroid DVC, and she would do the same thing. And every time she took a picture, it would scare the hell out of her. And she would just be like, oh my God, the picture's the picture, the picture. Why do you think this is happening? And I'm speaking to one of the assistant exorcists to the Pope out of the Vatican, by the way. And I'm not Catholic. Most people think I am. I'm not. And I'm telling him about this case, and he goes, why don't you just tell her to quit taking the pictures? And I'm like, I have. She won't. She won't stop. She's addicted. She's addicted. She's addicted. And I think that's the most frustrating thing. And John Zaffis, good. If you all know, we're
Yeah,
fairly friends. We've known each other for a long time. He told me early on, I was telling him about this case too. And he said to me, he goes, you know what, Steven, you can take a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. And that advice came from his uncle. But he's right. And that's the most frustrating part of it. You can give advice to you're blue in the face. But if they're not going to follow it, if they're not going to see how they participate in their own money, I had to. It's like this is how I participated in it. I had to take, you know, responsibility for my mistakes and the things I did wrong. If you're getting crazy EVPs in your house is scaring you, stop taking EVPs. But you
yeah,
more than not. That's one of the most frustrating things. Getting people to take responsibility for their actions.
yeah. So where can people find your books and follow your work?
Well, the books you can get anywhere. I mean, seriously, the books are available worldwide. Anywhere books are sold or downloaded, you can find them. You can go to my now. You guys got to be nice to me right now. My website's in it is it's not very updated because I'm in. Why I'm in the dark is I'm living in an Airbnb while my new house has been built in Mexico. We live in Querétaro, Mexico. So and that'll be done next month. So get my office back. I can't do update website on phone very well, but you can go to stevenlachance.com and that'll take you to the shows, the books for the most part. Architecture of Shadows, you get that. Amazon. And I try to do my best to keep things now. When a publisher takes over a book, they're going to charge what they're going to charge. When I take over a book, like if their contract runs out, or I decide, because there's sometimes I just publish them because I don't want to deal with them. I can control the pricing a little bit more. So you'll find that a lot of times the digital prices are very, very low, like $2.99, $3.99. The architecture is $3.99. I think some is $2.99. If you want to read it digitally. It's the easiest way.
Yep.
Nobody's getting rich out here on writing books in life. Anybody that thinks we're out here making any money hand over fist.
I'll make sure to put all your stuff in
Love
the,
it.
all your links in the description,
Yeah.
they
You
can,
do it because you love it. That's why you do it. And those are
Yeah.
the places you'll find it. And I hope I make it as accessible as I can. Go to your library. Some of you, the US audience, libraries, a lot of the libraries carry them. I would rather you read them for free than not read them. If you,
Yeah.
you go read them.
yeah,
Yeah.
library,
Somebody that's interested in reading your work, right?
yeah, support your local library because, I don't think that they don't get as much love as they used to.
I'm one of these writers that's known to bring books to libraries.
So I have one last question for you before we wrap up. You've spent 25 years asking haunted places what they remember. What do you want to be remembered for?
That I didn't give up. That I didn't give up. And that I didn't settle because it was easier to settle with answers than it was to keep looking. That maybe I helped somebody else to think. And I've helped a lot of families. And I want to be, I would like to be remembered that, I did something good too. I took a bad situation, the screaming house was awful. I took a bad situation. I made something good out of it. I'd like to be remembered.
That's great. Yeah.
They learned something from me too.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, it's been, fascinating, this conversation. We'll have to do this again sometime because I didn't even get half the questions I wanted to get to ask you.
The questions. That's the problem.
And so if you want to dig deeper into Stephen's work, both Architecture of Shadows, Ghost Memories, and The Way to Places, and Zombie Road Between the Living and the Lost are available now. I'll put the links in the description below. Please go support.
If you've not read anything of mine, start with The Uninvited.
Start with The Uninvited.
Start with The Uninvited.
So I'll have all those in the description below. And if tonight's conversation pulled you in, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell. I drop new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday, and you don't want to miss anything that's coming up. And remember, history never truly dies. It just finds new ways to haunt us. Until next time, keep digging into the darkness.